Welcome to Conceive the Podcast, your resource for all things fertility, women's health and pregnancy, with your hosts, Jaya Ferreira, Chinese medicine practitioner and Director of Natural Fertility Geelong, and me, Libby Morgan, Practice Manager and Jaya's friend. Welcome everyone to the third episode of our endometriosis series. Today we're going to be chatting with Geelong-based clinical psychologist Meg Odgers. Meg completed her Masters of Psychology at Deakin University and now provides evidence-based psychological interventions to young people and adults experiencing mental health concerns. She works in private practice at Breathe Psychology in Geelong and at Barwon Health at the Pain Management Unit. Meg works in many areas of mental health, but today we're going to be talking with her about the clients that she works with that have persistent pain from endometriosis and pelvic pain. Thanks for joining us, Meg.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's kick off with, can you just tell us a bit about your background and your path to working in the field of psychology and then specifically in the field of pain psychology?
Certainly. So I wanted to become a psychologist from a really young age because I had a really formative experience with a psychologist when I was really little. And I guess that set the trajectory for me thinking about how other people think and the way I think from a really young age. And then just reading lots of books about it. I grew up in Tassie and it was a really big step for me to move over to Geelong, go to Deakin, but I absolutely loved doing my undergraduate and my postgrad at Deakin. I guess I never expected when I became a psychologist to, or even when I set out to become one, that I would end up working with people with pain. It was not at all on my radar. And it was only when I did my final clinical placement as part of my master's in the pain management unit that I work at now that it really invigorated me, actually, working with these people. By the time you get to a public pain management unit, you can often feel pretty beaten down and disenfranchised. But there are really practical things that we can do to support people living with pain, including people living with pelvic pain. So, yeah, it all started there.
So it's a very specialised area, isn't it? Not all psychologists would be offering treatments for pain specifically.
Yeah, so I guess to zoom out for context, I didn't know anything about pain. All through my undergraduate, wasn't taught. And it was only when I got into the final year of my postgraduate that we had a health psychologist come in and give a 4-hour lecture on the most evidence-based kind of science around pain, which is the NOI group pain education. I was really schooled in that lecture. I didn't know the first thing about pain science. I was really starting from zero. I guess it was a shock to me how little I knew about pain, given that pain is a universal experience. It's a survival experience. We've all experienced pain at one point or another. So it was really kind of intriguing from that point of view. And then more politically, it was really interesting to learn that, pain, the science of pain education as an intervention isn't really taught within postgraduate psychology degrees. Not many people, not many of my colleagues necessarily feel confident treating this population because they often come with many medical diagnoses attached. It can be really hard when you don't actually have the training from the undergraduate or kind of more specialist training outside of uni. So it can be a little bit intimidating. And certainly I've been intimidated at times with all the medical stuff I've had to learn as part of the placement, as part of the work that I do now. It is a specialised area. I really hope going forward, and I think it is building momentum, pain is becoming a little bit more sexy, and I hope that more of my colleagues want to learn more about pain and really learn how to support people with pain.
Yeah, because I'm ashamed to say I was the same. As soon as I had heard about a psychologist for endo, adeno, pelvic pain, I said, what? Really? How does that work?
Yeah.
And what an amazing resource.
Yes. Language is really important with pain, and we can get into that later. But in terms of someone's pain care, ideally and optimally, you want a really amazing team around you. Not just a good GP, not just a good doctor, not just a good gynecologist. You want a team of professionals. And certainly, that's where one of the social determinants of health comes in. Often people don't have the money or the resources to be able to have a beautiful care team around them. But certainly I think people do better when they have more holistic care, they have medical care allied healthcare, including psychology, physio, complementary alternative care, acupuncture, yoga, all these different things are so important as part of a holistic care plan.
Yeah, we're going to get better outcomes.
That's right.
If we're looking at it from the big picture right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of therapies do you offer for women with endo and pelvic pain?
So I guess when I think of the 4 major schools of thought or intervention, I think it's absolutely essential to have a foundation in pain education. And when I referred to that lecture that I received at university from the health psychologist, she was trained by Noi Group in pain education. So, pain education, the premise of pain education, as it's a standalone intervention, if you will, is that by understanding the science of pain, you knock out a huge part of the fear of pain itself and the implications of being in fear, living in fear of pain, which is that you're scared to move, scared to, in the sake of pelvic pain, often have sex, scared to go out for dinner with friends, a whole host of things that really reduce quality of life can happen when people don't understand the science of pain. So just by having someone trained in pain education, understanding the science, understanding the importance of language, we can kind of alleviate. We're really filling the gaps in their understanding because, of course, everyone living in pain has a really good understanding of pain and education in pain because they live with it every day. But we want to bring more of the scientific side of things. And that can help the person psychologically to get a little bit of distance from their pain and feel like they're getting back in the driver's seat rather than the pain being the driver of their life, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've experienced that personally with an understanding of pain.
So you're saying that once they learn about how their pain actually works from their brain to the rest of their body,
Yes.
it can help to improve their symptoms.
Yes. So just understanding that pain is made in the brain and felt in the body, that knowing and understanding that pain is made in the brain and felt in the body doesn't actually infer that the pain is all in your head. You know, that would be like saying that thirst is all in your head.
Yeah.
Thirst is made in the brain. Our sleep drive is made in the brain. Our sex drive is made in the brain. For some reason, we stigmatize pain because it's made in the brain, even though all our other survival instincts and mechanisms are also made in the brain.
Yeah.
There came this time where we decided, oh, okay, well, if pain is made in the brain, then it's all in my head and people think I'm faking and, you know.
Yeah.
It's not true. I don't know where that happened. I don't know where that bump in the road came along, but it's deeply unhelpful.
Yeah, and Libby and I Libby brought this up when we were discussing this episode, that she said, oh, I wonder if people will get offended that
they do.
Their doctor or someone saying, let's see a psychologist, that actually I do have endo, I have got this thing inside of me, it's not in my head.
Yes.
And there's that disconnect of how people view their pain as well.
And that's definitely my experience as a practitioner as well, you know, especially in the public system, people kind of can be really confused about, well, why have I ended up in your office? You know, like are people talking about me behind my back? Do people think that I'm making this all up? Like, no, they, you know, people want holistic care for you. They want me as a part of your A team, if you like, because it's my personal belief and bias that every person in pain can benefit from psychology as part of their pain care. The question is often about access, and that's a discussion for another day, perhaps. But in terms of endometriosis and pelvic pain, I guess one of the really big core concepts of pain education is that tissue pathology, which we might call endometriosis in this instance, but it could be cancer or dysfunction within, the spine in other instances of pain. But endometriosis or tissue pathology more generally is not a reliable indicator of pain. Now, what the hell do I mean by that? That's a scientific kind of concept. But what it means in practical terms is that there could be someone who has small amounts of endometriosis within their pelvis, but they have debilitating daily pain experience. Vice versa, you could have someone that has large amounts of endometriosis within their pelvis, and they experience no pain whatsoever. And they only find out that they have endometriosis, and this is a really common story here in the endo community. They only find out they have endometriosis when they have a cesarean section. And so that's where these pain concepts from within pain education really come to light. Pain is not a reliable indicator of damage or pathology within the body. Pain is to be respected as its own phenomena wherever that occurs in the body.
Absolutely.
It's protecting from something. There are huge psychological drivers that need to be explored. And when we know about them, we can do something about them, we can change them. Sometimes they can be very simple and very easily managed or put to bed. Going back to the previous question about, what I do, pain education, helping people understand the complexities and nuances of pain is a really important starting point in my job, whether I'm working publicly or privately, because people can be really smart and highly educated and, just like me, didn't receive any training in pain, don't know the first thing about it, and still believe from kind of cultural conditioning that tissue pathology equals pain. And we need to unpack that and demystify that.
I guess it's that first step of them feeling a bit more empowered about their health too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I have a whole lot of endometriosis in my pelvis and I believe that tissue pathology, endometriosis equals pain, I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle, don't I?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I just have to have these endless surgeries to remove it, and then that will be the cure.
Or they're being dismissed for their pain.
Yes. And we know that having endometriosis removed doesn't necessarily eradicate pain, doesn't cure pain. Why is that? Because tissue pathology is not a reliable indicator of pain. They are two separate entities.
And when people come to see you, how often will they see you?
It really depends on the social determinants of health, on finances, access, how far they live. Depending on the presentation, it really varies. We say, generally speaking, is a good rule of thumb, coming fortnightly to therapy, any therapy for anything, is a good amount. But of course, if there's more complexity to the case, weekly may be necessary. Likewise, if this is something that you're just wanting to kind of dabble in, monthly, every 6 weeks might just top you up, fill a few of the gaps in the understanding of pain, and as a result, improve quality of life. Beyond pain neuroscience or pain education, the other kind of big psychological modalities would be cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy is used to treat lots of different conditions, frequently used for and really heavily researched for depression, for anxiety, post-traumatic stress, to varying degrees. And it's political. People all have their 2 cents worth about, whether CBT is any good or not. But I guess the thing about CBT is that it's skill building, it's capacity building. If someone's really wildly depressed because of their pain and, the pain has really got them down over a really long period of time, then just doing some CBT strategies around mood can be the little lift that they need to then further engage with something else, for example. So there's plenty of books, not pelvic pain specific books, but plenty of books that are CBT for pain oriented. One of them that comes to mind is Manage Your Pain. I forget his name now, but he's a psychologist based in Sydney that's pioneered much of the work.
We can add it into the show notes.
Up to the show notes, yeah.
Thank you.
We'll add it in later.
Yeah. So that's a great just little cornerstone of CBT for pain. But then I guess where my interest has gone more so for my private work is in EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that's because the practice that I'm in at the moment is a really trauma-focused practice. So people can kind of get a little bit confused if I suggest that we use an EMDR approach in the treatment of pain, including pelvic pain. And that's a really fair question to have.
Is that the rapid eye?
Yes.
I don't know about this.
Yes.
Yeah, can you explain that a little
bit more?
Certainly,
yeah. So I guess the premise of EMDR is that the brain is an information processing machine. Yeah. So you think back over the course of your life, you've been there for all of it, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
And you were there, you were right in it, and you have memories from different points. But your recall of the memory, you can't recall the last 40 years of your life or whatever. You can't recall it like you would watch a video of your life, because the brain has stored away memories in different parts of your memory system, and it's left a whole lot of your life behind.
Yeah.
Right?
That's weird to think
Some
about.
of it chosen to be left behind.
But everything that has happened has shaped who you are as a person, shaped your personality. It's shaped what you're really reactive about because the brain is really good at storing traumatic material. And pain, living with pain, can be traumatizing because there's a whole host of things that happen that can be traumatizing, including being told your pain is all in your head. It's really traumatizing. And so people get really stuck. One of the foundational understandings of philosophy about EMDR is that our brain gets stuck on processing a memory when something traumatic happens. And that's why some of the symptoms of the likes of PTSD include flashbacks, nightmares. It's like, I can't get past this memory. I keep replaying this over and over and over in my head. And that's because the memory process, it wasn't processed. It's stuck. It's like frozen in time. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
And so it's really clear cut when we think about EMDR for treatment of a single incident trauma, like, say, a traumatic car accident. But when people have had pain across the lifespan or lots of adverse childhood experiences, lots of chronic stress in adulthood, lots of traumatic experiences in adulthood, the brain can be overloaded with this traumatic material. When there's more traumatic stress on board in the brain, in the body, in the mind, we think of them as separate even though they're all really one thing, then we can expect the person to have more pain because stress and pain overlap considerably. So it's a really, really interesting area, and I'm still learning the ropes of it. There are actually protocols specifically for EMDR for pain. If the pain is related to clear traumatic precipitant, like, someone that has, say, shoulder pain or neck pain from a motor vehicle accident, the pain might respond to just processing the traumatic event. But if there is no clear traumatic precipitant, like a car accident or a workplace injury or something, there are actually other EMDR protocols, an EMDR for pain protocol, which just rather than doing the eye movements to process the memory, you can actually use audio or sensory tapping or things like that as a way of processing the memory.
So the actual eye movement itself is helping to process.
Yes, we could think about it as
memory.
It's literally push-started the memory processing system. So all the survival instinct, the physiological arousal that occurred when the traumatic thing happened meant that the brain couldn't do its normal natural memory processing and slip away into the folder in long-term memory. It got stuck, and it got stuck with all the physiological arousal at the time. So that's why when we're in a stressed out state, we can often clearly access all the other times when we felt that way before, because there's all these associations and neural networks with that particular state. It's hugely, we could spend 3 days talking about it.
Have you found it to be effective for pelvic pain?
Well, to be honest, I've only just recently done the second part of my training. So I'm only really getting my accreditation in EMDR with the Institute yesterday. But there are a couple of people, it's our treatment plan to do the EMDR for pain protocol and just see how that works. But that is obviously, like I said, I can't sleep at night unless I give the person lots of education and resources about what pain is. And people need to know that, we can try this treatment, but just in the same way that a particular medication or a particular type of acupuncture, it might not work. Yeah, it might not achieve this magical outcome, but we can give it a go and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, at least you know.
And the education part of it is so important. I know in an acupuncture session, I'm always saying, this is what we're aiming to do. This is what these points are for, just so that when they're laying there, they're processing that too, that we're all working in this together to have this outcome.
And you know what's so important about that is that when you're talking to someone and communicating in that way, it's hopefully giving this sense of safety.
Yeah.
And just like, pain and stress are intricately related, pain and relaxation can't really occur at the same time.
Interesting.
So pain thrives within a stress state, and living with pain is stressful. Living with pain is traumatizing. But often people can get really attached to their practitioners because it might be the only time in their life where they actually feel safe with someone, with another human being. Using really inclusive, talking slowly, like all these things can cue the brain, I'm safe for now.
Can we
Hugely
go
important.
back to what you're saying about language
Yes.
matters, like
Yes.
the language that we're using around pain as well?
So think about, and many people listening will have already had this experience, so you won't probably need to bring it to mind as a theoretical, but when you receive a major diagnosis like endometriosis, depending on the delivery of the message, can really affect the outcome and how I think, feel, and behave around the endometriosis that's just been diagnosed. So if the diagnosis has been communicated with really clear parameters about what is and isn't possible for treatment, really clear parameters about what it is and isn't, really clear kind of guidelines as to what works really well, what doesn't work as well, but what's worth a try. Are you getting the feel, like if it's communicated in a way that is really sensitive, doesn't use really catastrophic life or death, language, it can be really different experience compared to someone who's just kind of told, oh, yep, it was full of endometriosis. Yeah, you'll just need lots of surgeries and blah, 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 blah. And the person never really understands. They can only read on kind of forums what endo actually is. They don't really get any kind of treatment recommendations other than, say, just surgeries and, so there can be really different trajectories based on the delivery, the education, the kind of level of danger in the message associated with the diagnosis.
Because that could be quite a traumatic experience to be given a diagnosis.
Absolutely. You think about, you're sitting in the doctor's office and you're being, say, told you have this major diagnosis and, you go into a full-blown stress response. You can't really think very clearly in a stress response, can you? No. But all your brain remembers is the catastrophic language of lifelong, painful, so all the really, all the bad stuff resonates around it. You hear it reverberate around your brain. And it's, yeah, sure, there's, that is absolutely part of the picture, but it can just make such a difference. As practitioners in every corner of healthcare, we need to be very, very concerned about the language and tone in which we deliver diagnosis.
And I would say that situation that you just explained is very common.
It is. So, I hear it all the time.
Find endo. If you want to have a baby, you need to get rid of it because it is potentially stopping you from having a baby. Or if you don't want to have a baby, just go on the pill.
Yes.
Without any further education about what that pain means or what the condition is. And you're right, there's so many people that are on Google or they're on forums.
Oh my gosh. And isn't that just, ripe territory for every horror story?
Yes.
There's not many good news stories on those kind of forums and on Google Doctor. It's terrifying. It's in medical jargon. It's not understood by the likes of people that aren't medically trained most of the time. So it's just fear on fear. It's danger. It's scary. And what does that do? It opens the gate for a more severe and a more debilitating pain experience.
We need more doctors teaching pain education.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a big movement and lots of studies, even really interesting one. It's not pelvic pain related, but even in terms of when people get imaging done for various, injuries or so forth, the radiographer has a huge role. The radiographer can be writing things like normal age-related changes in the spine rather than, hugely medicalized, jargonistic, scary-sounding language, because that will change my perception of my spine. My spine will either be a normal spine that has changed over time with age, as every spine does,
Mm.
or it will be a really scary, terrible, dangerous spine to have.
I'm not going to be able to walk.
And I should
Gonna
just
always
sit
be
on
in
the couch
pain.
all day
Yep.
because I have such a terrible spine.
I don't know what movement I can do.
Exactly. It's all, and see how this has all come from lack of understanding, lack of education. Just, and often, and I don't for one second think that medical practitioners are bad or wrong. I think every person with pain absolutely needs a good medical workup to start with. That's essential, because there are bona fide medical concerns that can contribute to pain and be really concerning. But once people have had a thorough medical workup and the pain has no kind of clear medical precipitant or cause, that's when we need allied health. That's when we need our complementary and alternative treatments as part of our care team. If the pain is not medically explained, there's not quarter equina syndrome or anything like that, or some broken bone.
Yeah.
We need more than just medical input, more than just
And that's
medical
what
care.
Marilla Druitt was saying in our previous episode.
Great.
Was just that, there's that team effect as well. Women's health physios, pain psychology, yoga, meditation, acupuncture.
Yes.
I mean, and she was saying that talking about these things at the first appointment is really important.
100%.
That if you bring up CBT or seeing a psychologist later down the track, like you were saying, it can come across really badly. Like,
it can.
Now you don't know what to do with me. You're going to send me to a psychologist.
Yeah. You're abandoning me because I'm too much work. I'm too hard. Yeah. I've heard it. Heard it all. But actually, I wish, I could almost scream this from the roof. Like, everyone can benefit from psychological care regardless of their pain, and almost
Absolutely.
regardless of anything. Everyone can benefit from learning more about how they think, feel, and behave on a day-to-day basis,
And it's more than just if you have an emotional
Crisis.
breakdown or
Yeah.
some mental health issues. It's so much more than that.
Absolutely. There's a huge deficit in our understanding of what psychology actually is, which is a much larger issue than we can.
Yeah, there is such a stigma, isn't there?
Yeah.
But it must be becoming less.
It is. It's almost a really strange middle kind of place that we're in at the moment, because as the kind of mental health awareness has grown and people understand now what, depression, what anxiety, what post-traumatic stress is, there's almost a pathologization of emotions that starts to happen, where people are like, oh, I'm feeling sad, I must be depressed. It's like, well, actually, no.
You're allowed to be sad.
You're allowed to be sad is within the normal range of human emotion. To feel sad for a couple of days, in the context of some of the crap that's happening in the world, is really normal, adaptive response to have. If it goes on for 6 months or more, sure, you might be depressed. But it's really interesting how we our wacky Western world tends to kind of go between extremes of like, I don't believe in mental health, all the way to like, any feeling I have must be a pathology.
Yeah. So a lot of people would feel ashamed about seeing a psychologist.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even culturally, like within some cultures, to see a psychologist means that you're crazy.
Yeah. Let alone for their endo.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a whole host of work to be done to kind of set the scene for what psychological treatment of pain is.
And so in Geelong, there's not many practitioners working with pain, is there?
Not really, as far as I know, and I'm always looking for more members to join the club. But, as far as I know, there's only sort of a handful of us that are really interested and have done sort of additional training. Because like I said earlier, it's not really included in our studies, just like nutrition isn't included in medical training, So it's just one of those things, you can't cover everything. Jo Sheedy, my supervisor, she's been doing psychological management of pain for years. She's a legend in the field in terms of the Geelong region. Like everyone, she would have long wait times to see her privately.
I was going to say she works privately as well.
Yes. And a couple of my colleagues at Breathe also are really interested. Breathe Psychology are really interested in pain now, including how EMDR can be used to treat pain in some instances. So I think it's, like I said, it's becoming sexier. But I'm always looking for more psychologists to connect with that are pain nerds.
So
like us.
if someone wanted to access a pain psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
so they can either do it privately with a referral from a GP or they can just book in to see you?
Yeah, so I guess there's, in terms of private access, people can be subsidised through Medicare by seeing a GP and getting a mental health care plan. People can, if they have it as part of their private health insurance, it can be subsidised through that. They can get a rebate through that. Or, people can, if they have financial means, just pay full fee paying as well. But yeah, for those kind of few practitioners kind of interested in pain, a specialist kind of training in pain, of course, especially in this particular era, there is a wait time. So people have to be prepared to wait for that. So one thing I did want to say actually is, while people do wait for care, let's do some of the groundwork ourselves. Well, there is so
Yes.
much to be said for self-education with just being pointed in the right direction. So people can be doing a lot of this work before they get to me. Yeah. So there's books you can read. There's videos you can watch. There's apps you can purchase for
I actually
very
have a
small
list
fees.
that you've written.
Amazing.
Oh,
Share it.
fantastic.
I can't remember which list that is.
It's from Marilla.
Oh, yeah. So I compiled a list of pain resources that are all about,
It's epic.
CBT books.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's books that I haven't got to
And
read
there was
because
like
it's so long.
articles and podcasts and
Blog
Oh,
posts.
wow.
everything. Yep.
Yeah. I'm so happy for that to be shared, because if
Okay,
people
that would be great.
Fantastic.
actually use that as a resource and kind of watch those videos, read those blogs, purchase those books, use those apps in daily life, that's half the battle.
Yeah.
And then you can just be doing the trauma processing, or you can just be doing, state tracking supported with a practitioner. You can be really learning about the nuances of your own stress and trauma responses with the psychologist help, because you've already laid the foundation yourself by reading the books, watching the videos,
Yeah.
trolling the
that's
blogs.
Great idea.
Yeah. So it can be, yeah. And also, even though pain is a specialist area, seeing a psychologist, a really good psychologist who doesn't have a specialization in pain, you can still be getting really good care there and building up skills and self-care and all those things that are absolutely essential to doing more, say, pointy end pain treatments like EMDR, for more sort of somatic-based treatments. Later, like in a couple of months' time, I'm going to be starting training in somatic experiencing, and that is a really amazing modality as well. Not as much research or evidence base for it, but I think we're going to be seeing more and more on somatic therapies and pain going forward.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the criticisms of it is that it is very cerebral. It's very much about being in my head and picking through my prefrontal cortex to, notice my thoughts. And that is only a small part of who we are. Yeah, that we've got a whole body to consider.
Okay, so there's some limitations.
Of course. Yeah. CBT has its limitations. It is also life-changing for many people. So, take it with a grain of salt. It has to be experienced to really know whether it works for you or not. CBT done by one person is very different to CBT done by another person because of therapist factors, know. So you think you've had CBT once, but having it again with someone else could be a completely different experience. So keeping that in mind as well. But in terms of like our more somatic modalities, somatic experiencing, sensory motor therapy, these are also gaining momentum and traction in terms of tracking and befriending and getting to know how my body works and responds to the world around me. I'm not qualified to talk about it yet. I've been itching to get into doing
really
more
interesting,
training.
though.
Absolutely. And again, with somatic experiencing, the back end, like the front end of it, is all about educating about the nervous system. What are my trauma responses? What are my stress responses? What turns them on? How can I turn them off? It's all, and there's heaps of people on YouTube, and it's on the list. Irene Line is on the list of people to watch on YouTube to learn more about trauma and stress responses. We all have them.
I just keep thinking about how this would be so great for people who are dealing with long-term infertility as well.
Yes, because what is long-term infertility? It is traumatizing.
It's so traumatizing
And you
just
have
high
triggers.
stress for long periods of time.
And every time someone asks you, how's it go? How was the last cycle? You know,
or when are you having a baby?
Are you expecting anyone yet?
Yeah.
It's a trigger that that activates the traumatic memory network in the brain about fertility. Fertility has become traumatic, and there are all sorts of memories from the past about fertility being traumatic, and all sorts of present moment triggers that activate that memory network. And we have to anticipate future experiences where that memory network will be activated. And so there's a role for EMDR in trauma processing stuff around fertility, because it's
Wow.
huge. It's huge, and there's so much grief tied up in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's strange to me that people could go through something as horrific as fertility and not be suggested to see a psychologist. I just find that baffling, actually.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Talking to you now, it's like, why is this not frontline?
And there are a few people working in that area, but it's not something that people jump at.
No, people don't know at all. And I think, you know, if we zoom out even further again, our world is a patriarchal, male-run, medicalized, pathologized world. So,
and often the fertility journey is very expensive.
Yeah.
You know, you're paying your specialist, you might be seeing a naturopath and spending a lot on supplements or acupuncture or just eating organically. You know, the whole lot.
Well, that's not as patriarchal, you know, just receiving medical care only to the exclusion of these other amazing recommendations. Like, yeah, that's good. I can deal with that, but solely keeping people constrained within the medical merry-go-round is just no longer acceptable to me. People need to be referring to allied health, referring to complementary, giving kind of dietary kind of support. It's just essential.
We see it so much in the clinic. Sometimes it's just changing a few things in their diet, lifestyle changes, and they're there.
Yeah.
They didn't need much. They probably didn't even need to see us.
And the people that doesn't work for need more psychological support.
Yes.
Because they're hearing about how other people
did these things.
Just did these simple 3-step plans and had a baby.
Worked. Yeah.
Very, very distressing, you know, and grief and shame inducing experience to not have a positive outcome.
Yeah, I've done all the right things.
That's
I'm healthy.
Yeah.
It's not working.
And psychological support to cope with the trauma and the grief of that, but also forge, you know, a post IVF or a post infertility journey, you know, when we have to kind of close the book and say enough's enough.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
And acceptance and what is my new identity? Yeah. Because I'm more than just my ability to bear a child, right? But
and that becomes a job in itself.
That's right.
On top of their already full-time job.
Absolutely. This is incredibly hard emotional work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if we don't do it, what happens? You know, there's costs of not doing it as well.
Absolutely.
So there's cost of doing it, and they're financial and emotional. It's tough work. No one wants to do it. There's also, as far as I can see, you know, there's costs of not doing it as well. And they come down the track.
Yeah, they come to bite you later, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really important that people are offered care. And even if they don't take it up right away, they know that there are people there to support their emotional, mental health.
And then even if they can't afford to see you privately,
there's other
options publicly.
Yes, absolutely. And there are massive system issues, like I said, but it's just really important that people know that they have choices and options.
And let's just quickly talk about the Happy Study.
Yes, that's a great option, a great choice.
Yes, let's talk about that.
So the Happy Study is Marilla's baby.
Yep.
And Myself and my colleague, Maddie Dober, who also works at Breathe, we and another colleague, Daisy, based in Melbourne, we are the 3 CBT practitioners as part of the HAPPY study. So the HAPPY study is a randomized controlled trial. Anyone can self-refer into it, and many people have referred into it through Endometriosis Australia. And they are randomized into a treatment group, a treatment arm, and that is gynecological care as usual, which is just sort of gynecological care in the form of like educational leaflets. This is as far as I know. I really haven't stayed as up to date as I probably should. That's the control.
Yes, that's right.
Part of the study. And then they either get CBT with me or Maddie or Daisy, or they get yoga therapy with Jill Harris, who is amazing. And Jill and I did research as part of my master's on yoga therapy as an adjunct to CBT for depression and anxiety outside of pain, but that's another story. And so the HAPPY study is amazing because it's been a way of getting people psychological care through kind of research means rather than public healthcare funding means.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's been really awesome because in my early career, I've been influenced into some of the inherent limitations of CBT, taught to kind of poo-poo CBT a bit, and doing really strict research, protocol-driven CBT as part of a small group of women with pelvic pain has made me realise that actually there's so much value to be had in CBT for pain as well. Sure, there's all these other sexy trauma-based kind of treatments that we can do too, and they are also really great. But there's something so essential about having foundational psychological skills and management in terms of being able to monitor my own thought processes, being able to soothe my own stress response with very basic relaxation like strategies and practices. Nothing really out there off the wall, but just basic skills and education can go such a long way.
So the aim is then to get the funding to have a pain psychologist
Yes, that's
in
right.
the pelvic pain clinic at Bowen Health.
That's right.
Which would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
Just having that accessible to all the women that are going through there.
Yes. And I do see lots of utility in group work as well. Often, even within the Geelong region, groups can be offered at a lower cost, right? Because you're only paying 1 or 2 people, right? So there are different, like the research group, the HAPPY study is an amazing option because it's pelvic pain specific. And it's very hard often to find pelvic pain specific things. But, you can also be doing different groups rather than if you can't afford to see people privately, like there's all sorts of community organizations that do kind of group work-based stuff where you can doing mindfulness-based cognitive therapy or mindfulness-based stress reduction, anything that is evoking a sense of safety and security within my own body is going to support pain. So, if you can be doing those sorts of groups in the community, that's amazing part of your pain care. It's amazing kind of adjunct kind of treatment. And you're still kind of waiting to see a psychologist, still on the wait list, and you're doing all this other self-education and free resourcing and watching, Irene Line on YouTube,
And,
it's a
people
process.
in that group process, they're all in the same boat as you.
That's right.
And the same
and within the HAPPY
vulnerability.
study, that's been one of the massive things. Wow, I'm not the only one that feels debilitated by this pain and hopeless and helpless and like no one gets it and, like I'm a failure because I can't get pregnant. There are literally 7 other people in this Zoom room going through pretty well the same thing that I am. So that peer support is so important.
I feel like there needs to be more offered for men. Oh no, we're gonna wrap this up, Libby. But I've thought about this for quite a while. So men don't talk.
No.
Especially when they're struggling with infertility or maybe they're the issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of support for men.
And there's huge shame and stigma for men around that.
Absolutely. And it's so funny you should say that because I'm having a big pelvic pain week this week in terms of I'm doing this interview and then on Sunday for the Endo Help Foundation.
Oh, for Endo Geelong, you're going to the lunch? Yes.
Oh, well, no, I don't know if I'm going to the lunch. That might be a separate thing.
Oh, no, you're doing the webinar.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a lunch too?
It's a separate thing. But,
Yeah.
March is busy.
So big because it's Endometriosis Awareness Month.
Yes.
And so the topic of that webinar on Sunday afternoon is about sexual pain and relationships. And myself and the sexologist, Rochelle, have a lot to say about, how pelvic pain and sex, you don't talk about them in your medical consultation.
No.
And you often won't even talk about them in your psychological consultation, but they're a really important part of living with pelvic pain. And again, same principles apply. If someone feels really chronically stressed, they've got lots of traumatic stress on board, and sex has been, over time, become like something to be feared because of its association with pain, like there are really simple things that we can do to kind of stop that, restart, build more emotional intimacy, emotional safety, non-sexual touch, words of affirmation, all these things to help rebuild relationship and as a way of supporting less painful sex.
So important.
Yeah, so seeing a psychologist and a sexologist, if the painful sex is a big part of the pelvic pain picture, hugely important, hugely underrated.
And you're right, they should be offered straight up.
Yeah. So it's not just end the line.
From that GP consultation.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully with us using our voices, doing this sort of podcast and doing the Endo Help webinar, people get to know about it, the referrers and the people suffering. And there's, more, I guess, public knowledge of these services. And so people can actually ask them, demand them as part of their pain care.
Come in and come with that knowledge already.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Anything else
I feel like we've learned so much.
Yeah, I feel like we could keep talking, really.
We could,
might have to
easily
do a part 2 at some stage.
Easily.
Anything else we need to cover? Or
I will just check my notes. I just wanted to add that because people are used to being held within the medical model of care, which is a really important model of care, but usually it's sort of the only one that people have access to, they sometimes come to psychology or allied health with a very transactional mindset of, if I just come and get CBT'd, it'll magic my pain away. And I just wanted to kind of, and I think this conversation already has, but I just wanted to kind of illuminate that therapy is a process, not just kind of like a do this thing, get this result. Like it is an ongoing, unfolding evolution, right? Not just something you can kind of tick and be done and, I tried, it didn't work. Like
you're an active participant in it.
Exactly. Yes. So just wanted to, and I think that's to do with the hyper-medicalization of our society, that people think that, you just come in, do 4 sessions, it'll tick a box. And
oh, we're the same with acupuncture.
Yes.
For some people, 1 session, miracles happen. The next person, it's quite a few months before we see something.
Yes.
It's a bit of a slow burn, but in the long run, like CBT.
Yeah. So approaching these sorts of things with a beginner's mind, being willing to, be led, be supported, but also be active enough to be doing, your homework, doing your own self-education while you're on the wait list, in the lead up.
And it doesn't always feel good.
No.
This is why, otherwise we would all be doing it and we'd all be feeling amazing.
Exactly. It's hard work. And naturally we want to go the path of least resistance, which is not to do hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really fun, rewarding work if you can get past those blocks early on. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much today.
I've loved it.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe where you listen, or head to Apple to rate and review. You will find the show notes on our website, conceivethepodcast.com.au, and can follow us on Instagram at conceive_podcast, where you can also leave questions for future episodes.